Released in 2018 and starring Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, and the now problematic Armie Hammer, the directorial debut from Boots Riley takes you on an emotional and wild journey with probably the most insane third act I have ever witnessed. With a fresh take on corporate greed and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%, today on You've Never Seen It, we're talking Sorry to Bother You. Welcome to You've Never Seen It, an audio podcast where I, your host, Allison Salamone, am on a journey to never have to hear these four words again. I am joined this week by my good friend, AJ Lancaster. You can find him weekly over on What the Show, hosting with a bunch of fantastic human beings, and he is himself an absolute gem. What's going on, AJ?
Not too much. I want to say that's probably the most delightful intro that I've ever gotten on any form of programming ever. And nice earrings.
Oh, thanks. Always. We try. We are nothing if not professional around here with You've Never Seen It. But we're really not, because some of the shit that I'm going to be watching is probably out of this world, including this one. This movie, when I told my husband I was going to be watching this movie and talking about it, he goes, the first words out of his mouth were, "That movie's weird as shit." And I'm like, okay. And then I watch it, and my first words out of my own mouth was, "Well, that was weird as shit."
Yeah, it's one of the, I think, one of the highest quality surrealist films to get mainstream attention probably in the past 20 years or so. It's definitely out there. It gets really crazy, but it's all for a purpose, and I think we're going to dive more into that as we go along. But I love weird movies, stuff like this, and John dies at the end. I'm somewhat
another movie you suggested I watch, and the first thing I said was, "Yep, that's an AJ movie." Yeah. How does before even kind of getting into it and everything, how does it feel to know that there is a subset of people, a good chunk of people that know for sure can watch something and go, "Hey AJ, I just watched the most AJ movie of all time. You should go watch it."
It's delightful. I absolutely love it. When people can find, certain things like The Wave, which is another one it's literally an LSD parable movie written by these two guys that somebody in the movie review space went to Burning Man with, and it has Justin Long and Dalton Faison. They're like, "AJ, go watch this movie. I know the people who made it." And I was like, absolutely. I love that stuff. When something can abstract our own realities to kind of paint a picture of the world that we're living in, and they do that through film, I mean,
yeah,
it's amazing.
No, for sure. Yeah. So with the movie that we're covering today, my kind of first question is, what is it about this movie that you love so much that you had to talk about it with me because you were flabbergasted that I had not seen it?
I mean, it's one of those movies that when somebody mentions I haven't seen Sorry to Bother You, it's usually a, hey, go watch it and then tell me what you think kind of movie. It's such a workplace commentary. It's a insanely deep racial commentary. It speaks volumes to the injustices that it's trying to expose through this insane surrealist medium. So it's right there with just I think of it as a smarter Idiocracy.
I could see that. Yeah, no, I could definitely see that.
Without the eugenics part, or like the eugenics part of Idiocracy is kind of bad for that message, but this kind of still has a eugenics message, but it's like, says that's right. Bad. So I think that's the main like fundamental difference between the realities of Sorry to Bother You and of uh, Idiocracy. I think those movies is kind of diametrically opposed that way a
Yeah.
lot.
And you mentioned, talking about like the workplace issues that it brings up, but also the cultural and the racial issues. That whole third act where they're at Steve Lift's house
Mm-hmm.
and they're like telling him to rap, which now really does not hold up well considering who that whole third act does not hold up very well considering what Armie Hammer
No,
has been through.
no, the fact that Armie Hammer is a terrible human being makes it actually work better for me. It's like if you watch the Super Mario Brothers movie, and instead of like Dennis Hopper, who's King Koopa in that movie, if they actually had Donald Trump, then that movie would be a stunning
Okay.
commentary. But the Super Mario Brothers movie, that's a whole other
We can go
episode that
down
we
the
can
rabbit
probably
hole
go
down the road on that one for
hours
sure.
on when we go into surrealist fiction. But there's so much in this movie that I love. The love story with Lakeith
Mm-hmm.
Stanfield and Tessa Thompson is beautiful at the start and becomes tragic. And it's a movie with so many amazing performances.
And for
It's
as it's like as shallow as of a character Lakeith Stanfield is, where he's just all he's saying is he's trying to make money and he's trying to climb that ladder and he's trying like that's all he's thinking of is all these surface stuff. And but you still have with Tessa Thompson that you see her battling because she's loving the lifestyle that he's getting at this point. But like she's also the starving artist and gets all she even tells she's like, if you're gonna keep doing this, like I can't do it anymore. Like you're saying you're with your boys and you're with your friends, but really you're not by continuing to go and doing what you're doing every day. And she finally, lays the hammer down on him for it. And he's just like, well, but like, look at what we have now.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy like how you see she gets that comfort of luxury, but
Mm-hmm.
like my favorite scene artistically in the entire movie is when the garage expands into their deluxe high-rise apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and they go from sleeping face to face to apart, and they don't when they start fighting over the covers, and that's the end of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's relatably heartbreaking, and there's some good stuff in the feels there, uh
Yeah.
to like, and so there's the broad themes, but it's also a very personal film. It's something that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's, and we'll get into, say, the racial context of this movie, which, this is an audio podcast, but if you can't tell, I'm not the most qualified person to talk on racial issues. um,
We're
but
two white people talking about
we have
sorry to
two
bother you.
white people talking about this movie, which is,
So ironic.
it really, you couldn't have found anybody else. Allison, this looks bad on both of us.
This is what you chose this one. I just
it-
gave you the list.
Yeah, absolutely. But
We're here to defend Armie Hammer's character. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, folks. JK, Armie Hammer is the devil.
Steve Lift had some good ideas.
Worry free is exactly what we should be striving to achieve.
It's kind of cool how this movie shows kind of an evolution of the bad guy CEO.
Mhm.
I kind of alluded to, in the 80s and 90s, it was always a Trump style figure. Like there were many 80s and 90s corporate villains who were based off of, and they said, stuff like, what's his face from Back to the Future based on Trump. There's a lot of that. Now it seems like the new CEO,
Mhm.
that's the evil bad guy, it's something that has an Elon Musk feel to it, which you get in this.
Yeah.
You're starting to see in a lot of other. It's kind of interesting to see that shift in media,
Mhm.
with the Steve Lift character, and many others that we're starting to see now more in that that corporate bad guy.
And it's funny too, like with the, again, you're talking about the corporate bad guy. Like I just recently watched The Other Guys, and you have the corporate bad guy in that one, but he's more of like the Bernie Madoff Ponzi
Mm-hmm.
scheme, because that's what was big around the time that that movie came out. And not that far separated from it is now, we're, like you said, we're seeing that new brand of CEO terror in the
Yeah.
corporate, in the Elon Musks and all of that. And that's what Steve Lift kind of embodies. How often do you find yourself recommending this movie to other people?
It's usually one of the first few when people try to get into surrealist film that I'll mention. I'll put this in there with, say, the Southland Tales, or we mentioned John Dies at the end. It's something that, if it's pertinent to a conversation, I'll definitely bring it up. I don't recommend a lot of people movies out there. I'm not making listicles or anything, but it's, if I don't think that somebody's just gonna think, wow, that was some weird shit, turn it off and never think about it again, that's usually where I'll say, hey, go watch this.
I
What do you
love
think?
that. And speaking of like surrealist films and your taste in films and everything, when would you say like you yourself got into getting away from like the casual movie watcher and finding the genre and then and what you enjoy deep diving into, and why?
So I mentioned briefly the Southland Tales. I saw that movie for the first time in 2009. It was released in 2006. It's from the creator of Donnie Darko. And it had like, I saw it in a friend's like DVD case, and it had like The Rock and Sean William Scott and Justin Timberlake, and it's like, what is this? Like, oh, that movie's shit. Like, okay, well, can I borrow it? And I I watched it, returned it to him the next week, and I said, that is the most masturbatory, literally terribly self-indulgent piece of shit that I've ever seen in my entire life. And then I asked him to borrow it again the
I
next
love
week.
that.
And I found myself studying the layers and kind of picking apart the crazy performance choices and things like that. So, uh, yeah, that's another one where the Southland Tales is something that I'll interject into any random conversations, because it's definitely not your standard Dwayne the Rock Johnson affair.
No, when I think of The Rock, I think of the Scorpion King, and
Be
and
sure to tell him that.
I should tell him that. What a grand role for you, sir. The best
Uh,
role, the best rock movie, Scorpion King. At me, bro.
well,
Just kidding. The best rock performance to me is probably The Other Guys as of right now. Probably a recency bias with that. With when he and Samuel L. Jackson, they tell him, you know what we do now, brother? Aim for the bushes.
yep. Oh yeah.
just leap off of the roof. That was great.
Well, back into this though. There's elements of this movie though that are things that exist in society that, like, if somebody has questions on it, it's like there's scenes in Sorry to Bother You that will, if you don't know what code switching is,
Hmm.
how people of other races feel like they need to ca- do the Caucasian versions of themselves. This movie will beat you in the head with it. Like us with Jordan Peele, it's a very subtle horror movie take on it. This is just,
Hmm.
we are going to make Patton Oswalt's voice come out of a guy with an eye patch, his mouth, whose name is Mr. Beep. Literally, it's beeped out. And we're going to give
Yeah.
Lakeith Stanfield David Cross's voice. And we're
Yeah.
going to just hammer you with it. So maybe something breaks. That you can see that this is an aspect that you actually see in today's society that's really fucked up.
And not
And
only that is, I think one what they point out too, with how at a certain point after he started reaching all of that success, how he just slides into that voice without even trying, or without even, and like it takes Tessa Thompson to be like, stop doing that. Like,
yeah,
don't do that. He's like, oh, I'm sorry.
it just
Like the fact that
happens.
it becomes so ingrained because of what society and corporations and things are telling him that he has to do in order to be successful, that's really shitty.
Yeah. It's it's something that, I didn't really have awareness of growing up in Nebraska.
Yeah.
But as we grow older, I think that a lot of our generations become more empathetic, and that we've wanted to kind of understand and be better allies, which is a big part of who I am, is trying to be a better ally for socioeconomic injustices, everything else going on in the world. But that's another thing that's like, this is a cool movie to kind of be like that. E- I would never call it easy to digest, but easier than reading, scholarly papers before you dive into that. You know,
Right. No, for sure. And I think that I I like when a movie makes you feel something. Like I even if I this isn't wasn't my favorite film that I've ever watched, but the fact that I'm watching it and it's making me uncomfortable because of my own biases and like what I've been able to experience in life and seeing, I think Boots Riley does a really good job of giving you a good surface level movie if you're just looking for a movie to watch without like deep diving into those emotional aspects like you mentioned, where they're laying in bed and they go from facing each other as he grows into from the garage to the high-rise apartment, and you see them slowly, that you see that separation happen. That's not something I picked up on right away, but when you mentioned, I'm like, oh yeah. So there are deeper things going on with it, and I think he was so smart in how he did this that you can sit and watch it just to watch it if you want to, or you can sit and dissect it and really look for all of those deeper meanings that he put into it.
yeah. There's the stuff that's really surface level, like the rap song.
Right.
That it's like, okay, if you haven't got it yet, I'm just going to throw all these juicy little chunks at you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of stuff that I also live for. Just cover me in your chunks, Boots Riley. Just make it weird and get to the point where we're bringing into, spoilers, horse people, to
Yeah.
say that this is what we're doing to enslave the workforce. It's we I love when you can give such heavy-handed metaphors, but do it stylistically in a way that makes sense to the plot as we've been given. That's to me peak surrealist film with a message.
100%. Yeah, the entire being forced to rap scene was probably the most uncomfortable I had been watching a movie, and then watching him just start dropping the N-word with it, and then all the white people partying, like saying
Just
it
all
back to
bring
him.
it
And
back.
I'm just like, but we are like that. Like we as a race suck. We're like,
Can you imagine how many extras in that scene were going up to like the DP and just be like, "You sure I can?
I would
You
be
sure
going up
it's
to like
cool?"
Keith being like, "Are you sure you're okay with me repeating you?" Like, and the fact that like he had to wait for permission to turn off his white person voice from Army Hammer. Like
Yeah.
it's so that whole third act is so, and like that part of that third act specifically is so uncomfortable to watch, and it's so cringy for my perspective. And I'm like, oh, because I know people, we all know people like this, and I think that is,
Mhm.
and he does it so it's surreal, but also very realistic in how he portrays certain
Yeah.
characters.
Well, I think that every adult has had a moment of feeling degraded at work,
Hmm.
and that ties in, a lot of what happens with the white voice, a lot of what happens with Hammer, Army Hammer's character. It makes it something that's, oh wow, so the degradation that happens on a racial scale is even more. That gives that little window to it. That's just insane to me. And then, you know, when we go from that to the grander scale, which is the horse people, Jesus Christ,
The
the
Equisapiens.
Equisapiens,
I
Allison. Have you heard about
Oh
these
my God.
Equisapiens?
Can I just say the first
You
thing
hear
I
about this?
had,
You read about
the
this?
first thought I had was when he falls, when he opens the door and he falls out, I'm like, that is a big penis. I was not, I went, oh my God. Not that it was a horse person, like that was fine. Cause I'm like, I knew this movie was gonna be weird. But when he falls out and you just see a giant horse dick laying there, and then Army Hammer goes and makes the point to say, and you'll have a giant horse dick. Like, come on, man. Like, the fact that he's trying to also use that as a selling point, I was like, I've never seen so many giant fake penises in my life.
Right. If you've gotten to this far in the podcast
20
and
minutes in.
you
I'm
haven't
so
seen Sorry
sorry.
to Bother You, you need to see some giant
I
horse
almost
cocks.
wish I was warned about giant horse dicks. Just a little bit.
Like it should have been a disclaimer at the beginning of the
Just a
film.
little.
R-rated for giant horse cocks.
It was not what I expected. And I think that's kind of, it's almost like I thought Magnolia was weird for how that movie ended, because it was one of those things where like I was in it, and then the ending of Magnolia happened. And I'm like, I'm out of it. I was in it, and then horse dick. I'm like, okay,
Nice.
this is how we're going. And then Army Hammer being mad because he was like, that's very clearly an olive door. There's so many.
And Olive and Jade are very different shades of green.
I know. I'm like, I don't understand where he's coming from, but it just kind of shows his privilege. I don't know. Now I'm also wondering, what else do you have behind all those other doors, Army Hammer? I don't want to know. Actually, I don't.
Yeah. Oh, and you know when they go into after he sees it and they give the explanation to what the Equisapien is, and he's like, "We'll give you $100 million and we can turn you back if you sign up to do this. And we need somebody to
Oh,
be the
that was
Martin
like
Luther King of this movement."
another cringe moment. Like, I want you on the floor being the Martin Luther King of it, like letting us know what's happening. And this is, and the fact that he's almost taking it because of the salary that he's being offered after being given
Well,
fake
and
cocaine.
it speaks to the layers of that line are haunting to me, for how the modern society treats Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
How you'll see conservative pundits, conservative white pundits saying things like, well, you know, quoting the I Have a Dream speech, but won't be talking about cashing a check or equity or be talking about the actual things that Martin Luther King stood for, how they enshrined and turned him into a folk character when there are people who are alive who are the same age as Martin Luther King. Barbara Walters is the same age as Martin Luther King. And they've twisted and folk hero the narrative to fit their own control. So you already know when he drops that line, that's what they're planning to do to him. Beyond the other things that being the Martin Luther King of a cause might be associated with how things ended for Martin Luther King. So when that line was just like, oh, this is much more sinister than even turning him into this. It's saying if you stand up for this, we've already controlled the narrative. And it's talking about how society has controlled the narrative for people who've stood up for things in civil rights, to fit the purpose of the workforce that's drowning. It's yeah, that to me is the most terrifying piece of this movie.
Yeah. And hearing those lines being said and then going and doing kind of a mini deep dive on Boots Riley and what he did prior to this and what he was known for prior to this, and which was literally fighting against
Mhm.
corporate
Dude
greed.
was huge in
He was in a
Hollywood.
band with Tom Morello. Like,
Yeah.
you want to talk about fuck the damn the man and like fighting the man? Like, you don't get more fuck you than teaming up with than a Boots Riley Tom Morello team up. You
That
know
is,
what I mean?
oh hell yeah.
Like, and then for this to be his first directorial debut, his first theatrical film, and to have it have the reception that it did, I think it's phenomenal. I believe he premiered it at Sundance, but then I honestly thought when I was going to Rotten Tomatoes to get the score, in my head, just because of how I feel like the world works, that Rotten Tomatoes would have shit on it and the audience score would have been higher. And in fact, it was the opposite. The audience score is at the 70%. Meanwhile, the critic score is at 95.
Yeah. This is,
Wait,
it's a film nerds movie for some reason. To me, that's where I always have my disconnect. Is this a film nerd movie, or is this an audience movie? And like, it's still not like 70% is a great score.
oh, it is for sure. But how many people do you think went into this movie going, okay, and then did what I did and went, oh, that's a horse dick.
I think there's a lot. There's a lot.
Like, this is one of those movies I'm actually kind of bummed I didn't go and see in theaters. And it was one I feel like was in and out pretty quickly. Like, I don't remember it being in for a long enough time that I was able to go and check it out. It just wasn't on my radar at the time. But now I kind of wish, but now I kind of wish I did, because I want to hear the audience pop. Like, I love an audience pop, and I feel like it would have been really big when the giant Equisapien and his horse wiener just showed up on. I'm still, and it's in my head now on a loop. Now that we brought it up, it's like literally the scene right now is just playing in my head on a loop. It's just, it's on a loop right now. It's living rent free in my brain.
So did you know like the origins of how long the script had been around?
The script was around since 2000, like
12.
2000. Oh wow. Okay.
An early draft of the script in 2014 literally said the phrase "Worry Free is here to make America great again," and they had to change it because things happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
It was a. Oh, sorry, you didn't know.
Yeah, no.
It was this political slogan.
Oh.
Yeah, they had to change because that was coincidental.
Okay.
Yeah. So they, it's crazy. Like, and like, there was an album that was "Sorry to Bother You" from Boots Riley. It serves almost as a soundtrack to the movie 6 years before it was conceived. Then he wrote it into a book, and then he adapted the book.
Okay. That's neat.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I did not know that.
It's a long story with this movie. That's super cool to see, like how it did really well. Independent Spirit Awards. It won best first directorial feature for him, which I think was totally deserved.
Oh, absolutely. So. I know he has a TV show in the works too, or he had one.
I'm not familiar with the name of it, but I remember hearing. I'm really excited for whatever he chooses to do artistically, because it doesn't seem like there's ever going to be anything half-assed.
No, and I love that. One of my favorite things is it's like, even though like you take a Paul Thomas Anderson, I don't love his films. The only one that I've really can say I've enjoyed has been Boogie Nights, but I can appreciate him taking the time and not doing every single film that comes his way. Like what he does is he takes his time. He chooses very specifically what he wants to do. And he doesn't have like a Michael Bay 10,000 films under his belt because he just like, he didn't do like 16 Transformers because he could, you know, like he's some would say smart with his choices. Again, I'm not a huge enough fan, but I at least appreciate the hustle in the sense that he's not just going to put out crap to put out crap.
Yeah, he's very, very selective with his choice of
Exactly.
projects.
And I feel
And
like someone like Boots Riley is going to continue to be selective with what he does.
oh yeah, and I can't wait to see with all the elements that were in this what it would be that he would do next. If it could be like an Adam McKay style, dramedy, kind of biodramedy of somebody. It could be a Cronenberg movie. It could be anywhere in between that. Something I could never imagine.
Yeah.
Um, just from what we've seen.
Oh, absolutely.
So cool.
Absolutely. And I love that we're doing this one so early on and having it be something that's done by a director that's so, it's not necessarily, I don't like saying that's like specific or niche, but I feel like it's a movie that everyone needs to see just for the sheer sense of it's so, number one, and just for the topic that it brings. Because I feel like no matter what, this is a movie that, other than Armie Hammer himself, will continue to age well, because the corporate greed and those monster CEOs and things like that, they're always going to be there right now. And they're not going to stop until you get, the Steven Yeun's to come and the Tessa Thompsons, to bind together.
But Steven Yeun, he is a good actor.
He's such a good actor. I was so surprised.
Oh, well, that's the thing. This was before Minari, when he got his huge pop,
right?
And, like, he's so good in the supporting roles, but yeah, that's just. Oh, by the way, I had not seen this movie in its entirety since the pandemic dropped.
Really?
I rewatched it for this.
I love that.
So, I rewatched clips, that kind of thing, but I never went out. Like, I don't, rewatch a lot of movies from start to finish unless they're my comfort movies. I wouldn't call this movie comfort.
This is definitely not a comfort movie. This is very, to be honest, this is probably going to be very low on my rewatch list.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it.
Right.
And I did not do a rewatch since 2019. Now I've rewatched it 3 times in the last 48 hours just because.
Because you take assignments so seriously, and I love you for it.
No. It's because this movie hits a lot harder post-pandemic.
Yeah, I could see that.
You have to remember when you watch this movie that came out in 2018.
Yeah.
And there was not all the things that have happened with the world exploding.
And just kind of, not only just the world exploding, but the Steve Lifts getting richer through the pandemic. Yeah. Like, when the rest of the world is shut down, these were the kind of jobs that people were doing, having to do from home. Like, when we were talking about doing remote work and trying to make money and just survive, while the Elon Musks of the world and we're still profiting off of.
The world has gotten worse since this movie came out.
Like, what's his face from Amazon, Jeff Bezos, thanking his employees for sending him into space. Like, this wouldn't be possible without all of your hard work. The hard work you've been profiting on to get you to space. What the fuck?
It's like the world was still, like, things were not the best in American history in 2018, but 2022, it hits different.
It hits so different. It really does. I wouldn't even, and how close, 2018, it was a year later, or just about a year and a half later from when this movie came out, that everything just blew up.
Yeah. And it was the gasoline on the fire of the whole situation that this was commenting on. This is a movie that came out pre George Floyd.
Yeah.
That, and it's like the scene with Danny Glover, which, to pivot, Danny Glover, that opening scene with the white voice is hilarious.
Oh, it's so funny.
That is,
and it's
brilliantly written.
It is, and it
saying,
and he just, like, And the whole thing about him doing is he's just doing it just to do it and just to have a job, right? He's not trying to become a super caller. Like, he's not whatever. And he's like, hey, man, if you just want to make a sale, got to use your white voice. Here, let me help you. Like, trying to just be like, hey, let me help you out here, man. Also, the Terry Crews of it and, like, how aggressive he is as, like, a team leader in all of it.
And this is 2018 Terry Crews as well. But I love that, like, the guy who demonstrates the voice is Danny Glover, who has that smoking.
I've smoked a pack of unfiltered Marlboros 3 a day.
It goes into that voice that is cartoonish. And he's like, you know, the one you use when you get pulled over by the cops. Like, the commentary that exists here, and even with the Equisapiens and the riots and the workforce as it is, and there's so much that it's hard for me to put this movie into words sometimes. And the scenes, it's so visceral.
Well, like, even the idea of worry-free post-pandemic is...
You could see that being a thing that we
100%, especially when I could see people during the pandemic going to something like that because they're laid off, because they've been, I mean, where I live in Orlando, we thrive off of theme parks and tourism, and they were shut down for months. My husband was out of work for months because of the shutdown and the job that he had at the time. And we were luckily able to get through it. But there were people that weren't as lucky, that if they had an option like a worry-free where they could take their family and go somewhere and do, you know, whatever the labor was and have it be when you get a meal, like, if you're desperate enough to do something, you're going to do it. And watching an idea like that in a movie and realizing how real that could have been, or how real that could be if we keep going the way that we're going, is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and it's how unnecessary it is. I mean, I just got done recording this the week after Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness came out. I just got done watching that movie a second time. There's a line where America Chavez says, yeah, food's free in this universe. It's free at most. It's kind of weird that it isn't yours.
Yeah.
You know, like, those little things that...
that you could...
I told you I was going to keep the anarcho-communism to a minimum.
Not when you're talking Boots Riley. I think what's really funny, when I looked on Wikipedia, it has, like, musician, director, communist something. Like, it is... Hold on, I gotta pull it up, because it is the funniest. I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting what they have him as communist activist is what they have as him. Lead vocalist of The Coup and Street Sweepers Social Club, which is the band that he did with Tom Morello. But I love that, like, that's his, he gets his film director, producer, screenwriter, rapper, and communist activist. I'm like, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah. At least
it's out there, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's so funny too that, like, I don't even think of it as communist activism. I think of him as, at least from watching Sorry to Bother You, if, like, the world is shitty the way that we're running it. Like, look how shitty this world is that we're running, and we have the ability, if the Steve lifts,
to seize the means of production. Allison, this is what we're here to talk about.
I'm gonna get
by
flagged.
The end of this podcast.
NSA is listening, and I'm gonna get flagged once this drops. I'm gonna have the FBI and the CIA at my door. It's fine. We're good.
And, you know, since this is an audio only podcast, I do have to mention that I do take down the hammer and sickle for the live streams, most of them. But the act, you know, it's not even political anymore. The commentary on, you know, workers' rights that's happening, and that this really makes a thing of is it's a human rights situation, and it's becoming more and more evident to a lot of people that workers' rights are human rights. So it's kind of cool seeing this once again in 2022 for the first time in a couple of years, how relevant that is to what we're seeing with, say, the Amazons of the world
And
today.
the importance for jobs like that with the idea of unionizing. And because
Mm-hmm.
without that, there how are you going to fight for fair wages and fair labor laws and not working yourself to death and dying on the Amazon floor or whatever the major corporation is? Because that's another big part about it is they're protesting to unionize as a telemarketer's union.
Yeah, and that's everything that explodes from there is
Is
just
it magic?
giving the broader, well, it gives the broader scale of, kind of the workforce as a whole, from, the what people would consider the more physically intensive laborers to, even something like telemarketing that
Yeah.
sucks. Anybody's ever had phone job, you know the trials and tribulations there, but like showing the full scope from literally turning people into horses.
Yeah.
Insane.
Insane. Um, when it comes to this movie, what would you say are, we've kind of talked about a lot of moments, but what specific scene or scenes would you say are your absolute favorite moments from this film?
So it's so much the garage scene at the beginning of the movie versus the garage scene into the apartment is one of my favorite things artistically. The Lily James white voice of Tessa Thompson with the Last Dragon quote, where people are painting throwing paint eggs and bullets at her. That's some
Yeah.
good shit. And then, I mean, the reveal of the Equisapien labor exploitation, and like there's so much though, but those got to be the big ones. Shit, when he has to use only his white voice on the power collar
Yeah.
floor,
And the amount of white people on the
and
power crawler floor, I think, is important to point out, where
he's a
he and um, Omari Hardwick are the only two black people on that floor.
yeah.
And in order to be there and to fit in and to do well, he has to act like all of the white people that are on that floor.
Diana Debo Cherry is one of my favorite movie names
Yeah.
ever, by the way.
Isn't that debauchery? No.
That looks like
No.
debauchery.
But how many people, and
Sick.
again, for that character, how many times do you go into an orientation in a new job and there's always like, we're going to do an icebreaker and let's do this. And it's like, she's the epitome of a super annoying team lead that you're just like,
That
I
woman,
just want to work, lady. Like, just leave me alone. Like, you're bothering me.
I can't remember the name of the actress, but I would not be surprised if she has led focus groups in her like
Oh,
real life.
probably.
like like I had to do a double take because at first she kind of has that Catherine Hahn kind of appeal to her. I can't remember her name. What is okay, do we look at the holy text? I
I
think we look at the
I
holy
do.
text.
She is Diana Duba Debauchery is her name is Kate Berlant.
Okay, which is it's a name that I
She's a stand-up comedian, actress. So she's done. I'm looking on her IMDb if there's anything that I would know. It's like she's done a few like episodes of a couple different sitcoms and TV shows here and there.
oh yeah, I Esmeralda in the
Hmm.
Good Place I vaguely remember. But somebody that I would love to see more of, and who kind of has some smaller credits that could have built up that Catherine Hahn kind
Oh
of
yeah.
momentum, but gave me that serious Catherine
And
Hahn
I
energy.
loved her for it. And but I
Um,
also was very annoyed
yeah,
by her for it.
yeah, so
Like it
good.
was just everything in this movie just hits. Every performance hits.
Like even Sal, like all the small people. Sal, the best
Yeah.
friend in the beginning, He was like, it was your friend Salvador's phone number, wasn't it? He applied for this job, and Sal's like looking at him through the
Yeah.
window.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, for
Oh,
sure. For sure. God, Terry Crews as the uncle though was killing me. And how he comes in and he's just like, uh I just he's like, I gave you a car, man. And just like, the car's a piece of shit. He's like, what, you want to walk? Yeah,
want it
I'll
back.
take it back. You want to give it back? And then he
You want to
goes,
give it back?
no. Oh God. I mean, every single performance in it feels like it was a movie that the amount of time it took to make was 100% worth it because of everyone that they got in it.
Well, and it's weird for me. Like, this is the movie that took Tessa Thompson from a face I saw in Thor Ragnarok and made her a name to
Yeah.
me. Lakeith Stanfield, I think this is kind of his star making role. With despite some things like Lakeith Stanfield's personal life, we're not going to go into it, but I powerful
Yeah.
performer. Um, Star making for a lot of people, I think, quietly.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And kind of with that, I mean, I think it's time to kind of get into some final reviews for this film. So AJ, final thoughts. Where does this movie rank for you? What would you score this on if you had a letterbox, or if you do have a letterbox, where would this land in your star ranking?
Three and a
Okay.
half. So that's kind of funny. I guess, after gushing about it so much, but there's the pacing issues that are present here. The film has a deep, amazing message, wonderful performances. Um, it's I'm also going off of the original theatrical cut, which the original theatrical cut is what I've been watching. Are you familiar with the way this movie was originally ending?
No, I don't think so. I watched whatever version of it is on
So
Netflix.
so when his
Yeah.
nostrils flare up, like right before he turns into an Equisapien, you see "Sorry to Bother You" cuts to credits. Um, yeah. So the from the credits, that's it still feels like the actual ending of the film was shoehorned in, with the resolution, with storming uh,
Uh-huh.
Army Hammer and all that stuff. So it's very good. It's a wonderful movie. I won't call it it's a B plus. 3.5
Yeah.
stars is a B
I
plus.
honestly, I think I'm right there with you. Um I think it is a very well done film for what it is trying to portray. Kind of lost me though in that third act. Like, it's just, it is what it is. The other thing that I like about it, and a lot of people have been saying this, especially people that we know, it's 112 minutes, so it's less than 2 hours. Um, and I think that's
Mhm.
perfect. I think it doesn't need to be any longer. Doesn't really need to be any shorter. I've really been enjoying these quick watches, right? Because like, when I'm
Yeah.
about to have to make a like I gotta carve out 3 hours of my day for the next movie that I have to watch. And with a lot of these, I'm gonna have to schedule my day around watching them, and I'm happy to do it. I'm excited. That's why I have a whole podcast. But like, the day that I watched The
Mhm.
Godfather Part 2, I took a PTO day from work because I was just exhausted from work, and I watched The Godfather Part 2 while baking cookies. Like, I paused for an intermission to like pull cookies out of the oven because I knew it was going to be an all-day event because that's a 4-hour movie. Is it
Yeah.
worth every minute of watching it? Yeah. But I'm more likely to,
For
if you
some.
give me The Godfather Part 2 or Sorry to Bother You, to go back and watch as like my only two options at the Airbnb I'm staying at, and I want to watch something, I'm going to choose Sorry to Bother You over Godfather Part 2 just for the sheer fact that it's shorter.
Yeah, I'm the same way. You hand me a 90-minute movie anymore, like, I'll, people seem like they want the most minutes per movie ticket when they go to the theaters. My favorite experience in the theater was Pig
Yeah.
last year. It was 90 minutes, breezy. Well, not breezy, it's heavy, but we're going to talk Pig later.
We'll put the one down the road. We're trying to have fun for the first few.
Yeah, that's gonna be the one.
By the way,
where
another quick question. How many times in this movie did we get AJ tears? Did we get them at all?
Definitely a few. The Martin Luther King line gets me. It chokes me out. The other big one is the garage into the apartment scene. I think it's mainly two.
Okay,
Mainly those
makes
two.
sense. I could see that. I could see for people who also don't know, myself and AJ, we are known within our circle to be criers. Literally blubbering messes. Yes. We tried to schedule a cry along, and we still need to, and that will happen one of these days. But I got a lot of other movies to watch before I get to that.
Oh yeah. Once you get like 100, you want to say 100 5-star reviews?
We'll schedule it. That's what we'll do. Well, that's exactly what we'll do.
We'll schedule it.
So yeah, so with that, I think, like you said, I'm right there with you. 3.5 stars up on Letterboxd. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Allison Salamone, my first and last name. So with that being said, AJ, where can these lovely people find you?
So you can probably, Wednesday nights, What the Show Pod on YouTube, live streaming and having some goofy nonsense going on. Twitter is at Lancaster, like Burt Lancaster, LANCASTER _AJ, for more communist rants. That's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. And for all of you listening, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that little bell in the bottom corner for notifications for any time we have new content drop here on Flick and Reel. You'll be the first to know. And also let me know your thoughts in the comments on Sorry to Bother You. What do you think? Do you think we rated it too low? Do you think it should be higher? Let me know how you feel about it. And leave me suggestions on what films you think you would like to see covered on You've Never Seen It. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Never Seen It, F the letter N R. And you can follow me, your host, Allison Salamone, on Twitter as well, at Allison Salamone. And until next time, my friends, be safe and go watch the movies.